How are you guys doing today? Today I'm going to be unboxing my WonderMill Junior Deluxe that I bought a few months ago. I was waiting on a shipment of grain that I got delivered, and I plan to use it in the coming days to make a nice big batch of cornbread. Hopefully it turns out well. I just want to get unboxed to show you guys what it's like and even demonstrate its abilities, because I've had people kind of trying to dissuade me from buying this manual grain mill, and they recommended me buying the more expensive Country Living grain mill. I couldn't justify the $600+ purchase, and plus this one is able to do nut butters and masa, which was a huge seller for me because I'm trying to make corn, or dry corn, a staple crop for me and my family. The Country Living mill can only do nut butter if you buy the nut butter auger. You can't get it wet because it has steel ball bearings or something like that. So this was ideal for me. So no more talking, I'll cut it up and we'll show you what's in there. Okay, now let's make the first cut. One complaint I had, and I've read about in regards to this grain mill, is that someone argued that it couldn't get the grain fine enough for them, but I've had other people say it didn't matter. If you're wondering why I bought a manual grain mill, it's because I like the versatility of, like, oh, I don't have to rely on cranking or power for me to get grain. Some call that pretty extreme, but you could always set up a pulley system or something with a motor and have it do it for you. So I feel like it's the best of both worlds. Plus, in an ideal world, you have two grain mills, one electric, one manual. So it just makes this is as a backup. See, and it even shows the motorizing attachment on the side. If you're interested, that costs more money, but hey, if you want the best of both worlds, this is probably one of the best ones out there for the price. Pretty big on customer service, so if for any reason you think if you ordered this mill and you think there's a defect, they definitely want you to call them and complain, which is nice. That means you can get a replacement pretty easy. There's a lot of spare parts. So with this, it seems like here's the owner's manual, the flour guide, the double clamp system, brush to clean the mill or the grinding stones, the handle, the masa and wet grinding auger, which is what I was talking about for grinding wet stuff, the stones, the masa stones for grinding. One of these is for grinding oily and wet stuff, the other one's for dry grain. I'm pretty sure this is the dry grain, but I could be wrong. And then here's the regular auger. This is the body and the feed. All right, and then this is the handle remover for something like that. Well, we'll figure it out. All right, let's get all the parts ready. I'm gonna read the owner's manual and I'll go over it with you guys. Okay, the first step is attaching the body of the mill to the clamp. You can either mount it directly to a workbench or table, or you can have these screws that make it so you can clamp it on, clamp it off, kind of like a C-clamp for woodworking. So let's get that started. So it seems like you do need some tools to take these out and place them on here. So I'll be right back. So I went and looked in my toolbox and I'm using a 7/16 little wrench, and it seems to be doing the job and getting them loose. So just FYI, I've seen some people use screwdrivers, or not screwdrivers, but a pair of pliers. I would kind of advise against that so you don't strip out your bolt. So. And basically all you're gonna do is you're just gonna kind of set this on top of these and do it. Oh, so I'll put the camera, I'll let the camera do its thing and I'll just kind of get this figured out. You may be asking why you even need a grain mill in the first place. And it's because if you buy flour in bulk versus buying the grain itself, the whole grain, it not only is it more nutritious potentially, but it lasts way longer if you learn how to preserve it. There's records of grain being still good to eat 20 to 30 years after it was harvested, whereas flour, you're not going to get that shelf life. You're not going to get anywhere near that shelf life. So just things to consider. It really ups your food security, especially if you can grow your own wheat and corn. Then you don't have to worry about things like, oh, we got to go, or we got to bug out, we got to go because there's natural event or natural disaster or whatever. Just things to consider in the future. Can't tell if the washers go after the bolts on the base of the mill or after. It seems like they go after. If not, it seems like either way, it seems like it'll be fine. Everything else, I can go back and tighten them, and it should be pretty easy. And I don't think you need them super tight to mar the coating or anything. So voila, you've got the clamp attached. And you want to make sure the clamp is facing away from the handle. And the handle should go right here on the back, where you can stuff it. Okay, so I went back and I did end up taking the bolts out from underneath and putting them underneath the bolts instead of underneath the platform itself. So I went and I got these snugly fitted with this 7/16 wrench, and now we're gonna move on to attaching the handle and getting the auger and all that put in here. It should be pretty easy. And so you need to take the stone for the mill. You'll see these holes in the front, and they should line up perfectly. First, you need to take off the bolts. Oh. You need to take off the bolts. I forgot to do that. Okay, and take off the washers underneath of them. Let's kind of set these to the side. put those through here. Get those washers. And these look to be the same size bolts as the bolts that we did earlier. And we're just going to kind of hand tighten them on. Get them started. And now the other side. Okay. Okay, so we got the auger. I don't know if you guys saw me, so you can kind of slowly squeeze it through this little area, and then from there you should be able to either, you can go a few different ways. It seems as though if you want to attach the handle, you can. You can just put on these little, what do they call this? The R pin and the washer, which they have right here, I believe, unless, yep, 2 washers. And then a washer before. Imagine the big washer goes on, and then you put your R pin on. And that should be able to, should be a washer here, and then screw that one on, hand tight. And pretty much from there, you got yourself a mill. And you're gonna have to take these off. It says do not crank this in the manual. Don't have 2 stones on, have them there, and then be cranking it with nothing in it. It's not good for the stones, just FYI. It also says that when you do start producing or grinding grain or whatever, there's a chance that some grit is going to break off. So it says within the first pound or so of flour or mill that you produce, you got to dispose of it because you don't want to be eating rocks. So just keep that in mind. Okay. Let me look at this. This goes straight. There's a little kind of symbol in it. And he goes you kind of kiss together. And then from there, it's pretty self-explanatory. You just have these little, a washer, then 2 things on the back. Okay, so this washer actually goes on the back of this plate, and this I had backwards. So the big one with the big burr on the back actually faces directly onto this. And then this one follows with the thick side going directly on. I don't know how I missed that. All it took for me to understand that was just looking at this little sheet that comes with the mill. Okay, I forgot to put on the grain or the flour feeder or funnel. So the way you take that off, if you want it on, you should take up, before you put on the grinding stones, you put this on and then you do all that, but just FYI, it's pretty easy to take off. Just removing these bolts again. But yeah, just some food for thought. Okay, now we got the catching funnel on. People said this was made out of plastic. It's not. Just FYI. So it says in the manual to add a pound of grain that you're just gonna grind just to get all the grit and stuff off of the grinding stones. And I'm gonna do something I don't care about because this is a lot cheaper than my corn, because I got the special organic corn. This is just regular rice you can buy from your local Kroger or supermarket, whatever. So I'm just gonna add about a pound or more into this. And I'll call that probably good. This is a 5-pound bag, so probably 2 pounds. We're close to it. Okay, and now let's get to grinding. I might loosen it up a little bit actually. It's a little too tight. So we made all this coarse rice flour. Some rice fell in. It was a little bit smaller, but it took relatively no time. For me, it felt pretty easy. We did have to change locations because the first table just wasn't working. This is a little bit better. I'm gonna test it out. I'm gonna put it back in and do a little bit of a coarser grind or a finer grind, and try it out and see if it feels a little bit easier than the first time. And now I'm just gonna tighten this up a bit. Try to make it a little bit finer, a little bit more friction against the stones. And then tighten that back up. We'll see what happens. This is flour. No question about it, this is pretty fine flour. You might like yours a little bit more fine, but for me that's probably fine. Fine enough. And we'll just go and do all this and make sure all that grit's out of there, and then we'll move on to the corn. That's some fine flour. It's about, if I had to guess, a cup or two. Ooh, you can feel the warmth from the friction. You can go in a little too fast. But, yep. Should be no different for regular grain or whatever. And I think there's still room to go finer if you want. Yep. Sorry, so here's the corn. It's whole grain, blue corn. And we're gonna actually loosen this up a little bit. Just so I like to do a coarse ground, and then I put it back in and go for a finer grind, just so it's easier. slowly increasing the fineness. I learned that if you don't have a good table where you can mount the clamps on this 100% and you get it nice and tight, or just directly drill holes in the table, you have to, it'll take a little bit longer because you can't get as much grinding power without it almost coming off. So to get around that, you have to start very, very coarse and then slowly work your way up. You shouldn't be doing that much resistance or having to put that much effort. And that's how we got to this. It took a few trials, but we got the end result. All right, next we're gonna do wheat. This recipe calls for a quarter cup or a cup of wheat. So we got some hard white organic wheat, and we're gonna grind this up too. I will say that the wheat is far easier to grind than the corn. One round of grinding. It's pretty powdery. I might call this good. And that's whole wheat. So whole organic white wheat. And we got the whole organic purple corn or blue corn. This is the final product of the cornbread that we made with the flour and the cornmeal. Overall, I'm impressed with what the grain mill can do. It is a little bit of elbow grease, a little bit of workout, but it's really not that much time. If you are doing it with your family, it can really like become a bonding experience in a time where you're social and just talking. I recommend that you do grind a lot of corn or flour in bulk and then store it in a glass jar, airtight jar or something, just to save on time in the future. But it's really not a bad experience. I would recommend this grain mill if you're looking for something that it doesn't require energy but could be converted to something like a pulley system. Yeah. Thanks for watching. I hope this helped in your decision if you're trying to decide what to buy.